Welcome to the first chapter in this program on everyday emotional intelligence. In this chapter, we'll be looking at one of the most important aspects of emotional intelligence, empathy. Empathy is the ability to be aware of, to understand, and to appreciate the feelings and thoughts of others. This is about tuning in or being sensitive to what, how, and why people feel and think the way they do. Being empathic means being able to emotionally read other people. You may remember, if you're a fan of the TV series Star Trek: The Next Generation, the character of Deanna Troi, Chip's counselor. She was an empath. She could immediately tune in to how people around her were feeling, even at huge distances. I know that sounds like science fiction, but it's an ability we can develop by developing our powers of observation and listening, and allowing ourselves to genuinely care about others and to show interest and concern for their well-being. It's the ability to non-judgmentally put into words your understanding of someone else's perspective on the world, even if you do not agree with it, or even if you find that perspective ridiculous. It shifts an adversarial relationship to a collaborative one. So why should you care about empathy? Well, we live in an increasingly fast-paced world, and it's clear that empathy is becoming even more important every day. It takes more commitment and motivation to pay enough attention to other people, but it pays off because it leads to dramatically more accurate communications. You increase productivity and reduce conflict. It gives you the ability to shift the balance from a contentious, uneasy situation to a more collaborative one. A collaborative alliance facilitates the beginning of building trust. You're also able to open new lines of communication and bring flexibility to resolving any concerns that you may have. In a world filled with communication challenges, one of the most powerful strategies we can use is empathy. Delivering advice and feedback is far more persuasive when it's done with empathy. So how can we build empathy? Well, one of the first things we would need to do is to listen, to form an intention to actually pay attention to others. Listen and really understand what is being expressed by people trying to communicate with us, instead of projecting our interpretation of our reality onto them. Most of the time, we listen to respond. We're forming the next response in our head even before we've heard the other person. If we just stopped and really attentively listened to what the other person is saying, it's a first step. Another thing we can do is to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. You can do this as part of a conversation or when you're job sharing or job shadowing at work. Find a way to literally experience what is happening for the other person. Try and understand the duties and demands of what other people face. Learn to read body language. Look at a person's facial expressions, breathing, posture, and tone of voice. Then, match their physical state in your own body and see how it feels to you. You'll find this an easy way to get into resonance with the other person. So why is it not used as much as it should be? Well, there are three main misconceptions about empathy which stop people from turning it to their advantage. People sometimes confuse empathy with being nice, making generally polite and pleasant statements. This isn't what empathy means. People confuse empathy with sympathy. The two are quite different. Sympathy puts the speaker first by putting into words our reactions to and feelings about another person's situation. Empathic statements begin with the word you, as in, you must be feeling angry about that situation, rather than saying, I was sad to hear about your situation. Or, my condolences to you and your family. These are appropriate and welcome in certain situations, but they're not empathic. Some people believe that by making an empathic statement, they're agreeing with or approving of the other person's position, when in fact they might be opposed to it. Empathy is simply an acknowledgement that the other person has that viewpoint. By expressing empathy, you admit its existence without passing judgment on its validity. On this program, we'll give you a few quick strategies that you can start to use immediately to develop empathy. There's also a pop quiz to help you test yourself, as well as a self-assessment to gauge where you might be on the empathy scale. So here's a few questions for you to think about. First of all, how can you start to develop empathy with your co-workers? Write down the name of a famous person whom you think personifies empathy. Who is someone from your life who is a role model for empathy? What would high usage of empathy look like? What would low usage of empathy look like? Take a few minutes to reflect on each of these questions before moving on with the rest of the program.